What do we know about the people who will move? What do they think we need for a good life? Will they come from nearby and speak another language? Will they come from far away and speak our language? When will we become the ones who move? What will we bring with us? How will we greet one another? In the past, what has architecture offered those who move? What could architecture offer them in the future?
Hello, everyone from Athens, Greece. I'm Antigone, and I'm going to speak to you about a project that was implemented in the city of Athens between 2018 and 2021. Let me just briefly share my screen. I hope you can all see it. And the project was called Curing the Limbo. So I was a project manager for this project. My background is more of a public policy. I'm not an architect. This refugee crisis back in 2016, as you probably know, most of the people arrived in Europe by the sea, arrived to Greece on the Greek islands and then to the mainland. And I think it was around 1 million people in the year 2015-16 that crossed Greece until the borders of the Balkan route, what we call the Balkan route, were closed in the north of Greece. So then people were stranded in Greece. It's a very, very long story, and I only have 15 minutes, so I'm going to try to keep everything short. The project, I just think it's important to understand how this project started. So this was a situation back then. People were this is the port of Athens. So once they arrived in Athens, they stayed in temporary shelters. As you can see, the city was totally unprepared. The country was totally unprepared. Greece was never a reception country. It was always a country of people who migrated. So there was a temporary camp that was set up in Eleonas, which is a neighborhood in Athens, with the initiative of the mayor of Athens. But people were just, staying in temporary shelters and just waiting for something to happen. There were some agreements with other European countries, and some of them left for other European countries, but a lot of them were stranded in Greece, in Athens, and in a state of limbo in a way. That's how the project got its name. This is a screenshot from a video that we did from one of our participants who ended up, having a quite nice life, I think, in Athens. But at the beginning, he was just like everyone else on the street and then in a crowded camp. At the same time, Athens, as a city that just got out of a 10-year crisis, as you have probably all heard, had its own challenges. So high unemployment rates, population outflow, and vacant properties. So a lot of people left the city center to live, with their parents or to go to the countryside. So a lot of empty buildings, which is a very big difference from other cities in Europe or in Canada. You can't build in Athens. It's overbuilt. There's no space. So we had to find solutions within the existing infrastructure, let's say. Refugees were receiving first aid help, but they had been out of activity for too long, as I said. A lot of them left for other countries, and they were the most qualified people left, and the underskilled ended up staying in Athens. And at the same time, we had seen a vibrant civil society and a lot of active community groups that took initiatives to work on unaddressed city needs because of the crisis. So a lot of small groups emerging in the city, high number of vacant buildings, as I told you before, and a lot of uncoordinated efforts to solve the issue. And then one of the biggest challenges was to ensure that the lives of these vulnerable groups of people have a linear and smooth integration, despite, the general chaos around. So these are a couple of pictures of vacant properties in Athens, very typical. And these are pictures from the city civil society organization activities. So this was a hotel that was abandoned and became a squat. And you had this group of people who came and gave refugees haircuts, Here you have another civil society organization that was given Greek lessons. And the idea was to create a gift system where we capitalize on the vibrant civil society of Athens to help refugees overcome this stage of inertia. So to be involved in more activities and slowly, get out of the limbo state. The idea was that they would receive low-cost spaces to live, while at the same time they would participate in activities for the public benefit. So kind of giving back to the city while receiving a series of services, not just the low-cost spaces to live, in order to become more active. And the change we were hoping to achieve was to enhance their sense of belonging to the city. Because if you stay, for too long in a camp or in a tent or on the street, it was very difficult for people to transition, out of this state and to become, citizens of Athens. Better buildings, better neighborhoods, better society. I'm sure architects are very familiar with this. Higher opportunity for employment, attracting models for proprietors of empty buildings to manage their vacant properties. Of course, this was a pilot. I don't know if I said this already. This project was a big pilot in the city of Athens. So our aim was to create a policy change and a transferable model for other cities, as was also mentioned before. And the innovation, we did have to prove the innovation aspect of this project because it was financed by a very competitive European program, which is called Urban Innovative Actions. So the innovation was, that all the programs either addressed the immediate needs of the refugee population or would intervene later on once they have a life in the city. The goal was really to address this limbo phase of arriving in a new country. A lot of emphasis also on the psychosocial aspect of integration. So enabling people, empowering people, addressing the social context of Athens in which we integrate new citizens, of course, at the same time. Inclusive integration, which it's not really a term, but, together with locals and migrants, refugees, it makes more sense, if everyone is connected. And, to create a mechanism of generating social impact, producing a prototype for city pressing needs, empty buildings, and engagement around local problems. So that was more or less the approach. By activating people, helping them to participate in several activities, then they would become part of the city. And here are some other active citizen groups that are in the. This is a neighborhood of Athens where we actually started by doing neighborhood mappings. So we mapped the city needs, the neighborhood needs, and then we tried to connect refugees with locals in order to co-design programs or small projects to address those city needs. So these are pictures from the mapping. Now, very briefly, because the project was, really big and there's not enough time to go through everything. So the challenge was to create a holistic and sustainable integration model to help refugees transit from humanitarian aid programs to a life that they choose. And this is very important. This was a very important aspect to help people choose their own life, to connect them with local citizens and to support these collaborative actions. There was actually seed funding for the actions. The partnership, also very important because we didn't work by ourselves at the City of Athens. We worked with the University of Athens that provided all the trainings. So English language, Greek language, ICT, we had audiovisual courses in order to help people be more creative and get out of the limbo state. And then we had two INGO partners, so Catholic Relief Services, which was responsible for the housing component, and the International Rescue Committee for the job counseling part. The pillars, I briefly just described them. So apart from the trainings, we had a housing facilitation unit, which actually piloted a social rental agency. So again, back to the idea that you can't build in Athens, you have to use whatever is out there. So empty apartments, for try to find incentives for the owners, and then try to make them affordable for the refugees. I could spend a whole presentation on this one alone, but again, going through the whole program as quickly as I can. Job counseling, psychosocial support, very, very important. It was really at the center of everything. And connecting refugees to the active citizens. The target group, just to briefly let you know, we had to narrow it down to a few languages because we couldn't. There had to be some criteria, to make the pilot work. And it was all adult refugees that were granted asylum in Greece. And of course, the indirect, let's say, target group or beneficiaries of this program, or participants, as we prefer to say, were active citizens, landlords, and employers. So how did it work? The goal was to create autonomy and independence and to create long-lasting relationships with the city. Refugees chose activities offered from a menu of options. So there was a personal plan that was drafted with the help of the psychosocial service. A language, skills development courses, job counseling, housing facilitation unit, as I said before. And a lot of emphasis was put on empowerment and autonomy. So, for example, instead of showing people how something was done, we really tried to make them, to enable them to do it themselves. Bureaucratic issues, stuff like that, everyday things that are useful when you live in a city. And 9 collaborative actions were created by refugees and locals. This was a result of the program. Key challenges, management and governance issues. I mean, when you work with so many different partners, different backgrounds, completely different specialties, it's really important, and it adds a lot to a project. But everyday management is just more difficult, of course, because you have to find a common way of doing things. Delays, of course, by administrative procedures and the institutional framework governing public accounting. Don't forget, this was a City of Athens project, so public sector, very heavy bureaucracy in Greece. COVID-19, unfortunately, the project at the middle of its life cycle, I think, we were in lockdowns were announced. So a lot of things couldn't be done or were done on Zoom, just like we are doing now. Housing dependence on private market availability. So that was a problem because when we designed the program, a lot of empty buildings were available, a lot of apartments. But then in the meantime, by the time the project started being implemented, had Airbnb, touristic, let's say, apartments being renovated for touristic purposes. And we did try to approach public sector buildings because there's a lot of them that are abandoned in Greece. And the bureaucracy was just too heavy, or the interest was too low. High dropout rates, that was also something quite, we didn't think it would be as high. People would just leave overnight, not say anything. Or just leave to go to Germany because there were more jobs. And of course, the financial sustainability of the project, which it pains me to say, but unfortunately, it was a pilot that ended. And even though there was so much to learn from it, and it could be implemented in any other city, City of Athens didn't choose to continue the project or to find financing for the project. So very briefly, lessons learned, the importance of working in partnerships, public, private, nonprofit, with a variety of professional backgrounds. Despite of its challenges, it's just the way to go, when it comes to integration or, changing people's lives, I guess, if we could say that. The importance of joint planning and decision making, again, very important in a partnership. Holistic approach for complex social issues. So it was really very interesting to see how, when everybody brings their experience to the table, we really understand people's needs more in depth. Innovative practices that can be shared with other cities, and mediation and investing in relations to build long-term relationships and bridges between refugees and locals. That's the most important thing, I think, of this project. So, for example, even when we helped refugees choose an apartment to live. We went to the neighborhood with them. We met people. We tried to really create connections everywhere. This is just the idea of the whole project as it had started back in 2017. That's it. Thank you very much.